A widowed millionaire spends an entire year crying in front of his wife's tombstone, who died tragically. But on her birthday, a street girl claims with conviction, "Sir, that woman was here yesterday." Shocked, he follows the clue that leads him to a forgotten neighborhood where buried secrets begin to emerge, and what seemed like mere delirium transforms into a revelation capable of forever changing his life and his grief. The autumn leaves crunched beneath Ethan Blackwood's polished Italian leather shoes as he walked the familiar path through Mount Auburn Cemetery. The crisp October air carried the scent of chrysanthemums that adorned countless graves across the historic Boston landmark. For Ethan, this daily pilgrimage had become as routine as the board meetings that had once consumed his life. 365 days, a full revolution around the sun without her, without Victoria. Clutching a bouquet of emerald-ribboned white roses, her favorite, Ethan approached the black marble headstone that had cost more than most people's cars. The engraving gleamed in the late afternoon sunlight. Victoria Eleanor Blackwood, beloved wife, 1989-2024. "Happy birthday, Vic," he whispered, his voice catching as he knelt to place the flowers beside dozens of others he'd brought in days prior. At 45, Ethan's salt and pepper hair and the new lines etched around his eyes made him look older than his years. Grief had aged him prematurely. Behind him, the Boston skyline rose like a distant kingdom, the Blackwood Enterprises Tower prominently visible among the skyscrapers. The empire he'd built meant nothing now. What good was being CEO of a billion-dollar tech conglomerate when you came home to an empty mansion every night? "The board wants me to consider the Singapore expansion," he continued, speaking to the headstone as he did every day. "Wouldn't that be something? Remember how we always talked about traveling there together?" The wind rustled through the trees, sending a shower of golden leaves spiraling around him. Ethan closed his eyes, allowing a single tear to trace down his cheek. He could almost feel her there, almost smell her signature jasmine perfume. "The accident investigator called yesterday," he said, his voice hardening. "Nothing new, just procedure. God, Vic, I still can't believe that truck driver walked away without a scratch while you—" His words dissolved into a sob. The police report had been clear. Victoria's car had lost control on the rain-slicked highway, colliding with a guardrail before plummeting into the Charles River. By the time emergency services arrived, the vehicle was fully submerged. The closed-casket funeral had followed 3 days later. Ethan sank to the ground, resting his back against the cold stone. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos as he did every visit. Victoria laughing on their yacht in Cape Cod. Victoria in a flowing emerald gown at the Blackwood Foundation Gala. Victoria sleeping peacefully on their honeymoon in Santorini, her dark hair splayed across white pillows. "Mr. Blackwood." The unfamiliar voice startled him. Looking up, Ethan saw a young girl standing a few feet away. No more than 11 or 12, she wore a faded red hoodie, several sizes too large, and jeans with patches at the knees. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her brown eyes regarded him with an unnerving intensity. "How do you know my name?" he asked, quickly wiping away his tears. "Everyone knows who you are," she said matter-of-factly. "Your picture's in the business, magazines at the library. Plus, I've seen you here before. You come every day." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "What are you doing here alone? This is no place for a child." The girl shrugged. "I come here sometimes. It's quiet. Nobody bothers me." Her eyes drifted to the headstone. "Is that your wife?" The directness of her question caught him off guard. "Yes," he replied curtly, hoping she would leave. Instead, she stepped closer, peering at the photograph he had installed in the marble. Victoria smiling, her emerald eyes sparkling with life. "She's pretty," the girl observed. Then, tilting her head, she added, "Sir, this woman was here yesterday." Ethan stared at her, certain he had misheard. "What did you say?" "Your wife," she continued, pointing at the photograph. "I saw her here yesterday. She was sitting right where you are now." A cold sensation spread through Ethan's chest. "That's not funny. You shouldn't make up stories like that." The girl's expression remained serious. "I'm not making it up. She was wearing a blue coat and had a red scarf. She was crying and talking to herself." Ethan stood abruptly, anger flaring. "Listen, kid." "Lily," she interrupted. "My name's Lily Martinez." "Lily," he continued, struggling to keep his voice even, "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but my wife died in an accident exactly 1 year ago. She couldn't have been here yesterday or any day since then." Lily's eyes widened slightly, but she stood her ground. "I know what I saw, Mr. Blackwood. She has the same green eyes as in that picture. Like emeralds, my abuela would say." Ethan's breath caught. Victoria's eyes had often been described that way, their unusual shade a distinctive family trait. "She was nice to me," Lily continued. "She shared her sandwich and told me to be careful walking home alone. She said her name was Vic." The world seemed to tilt beneath Ethan's feet. Vic, not Victoria. Vic, the nickname he alone had used for her, a private endearment between husband and wife. "That's impossible," he whispered, but doubt had already taken root, spreading like poison through his veins. "I can show you," Lily said. "I followed her. I know where she went." "Why would you follow a stranger?" Ethan demanded, even as his heart hammered against his ribs. Lily looked down, scuffing her worn sneaker against the ground. "She gave me food, and she seemed sad. I thought maybe she had nowhere to go, like me and my abuela sometimes. I wanted to make sure she was okay." Ethan studied the girl's face, searching for signs of deception, but found only earnest certainty. Either she was an exceptional liar, or... no, it wasn't possible. He had identified Victoria's body himself, had watched her casket lowered into the ground just yards from where they now stood, and yet a tiny spark of impossible hope flickered to life in his chest. "Where?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Where did she go?" "Roxbury," Lily replied. "To the apartment buildings on Blue Hill Avenue, the ones with the blue doors." Ethan knew the area, a working-class neighborhood worlds away from his Beacon Hill mansion. What reason would Victoria or someone who looked like her have to go there? "Will you show me?" The words left his mouth before he could reconsider. Lily nodded. "But I need to be back before dark. My abuela worries." Ethan glanced at his watch, then back at the headstone that had been his only connection to Victoria. "For a year? If there was even the slightest chance—" "Let's go," he said, already pulling out his phone to call his driver. Ethan's black Bentley rolled slowly through the streets of Roxbury, drawing curious glances from residents unused to seeing luxury vehicles in their neighborhood. Inside, he gripped the leather seat with white knuckles, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. Beside him, Lily sat wide-eyed, clearly never having been in such an opulent car. "It's just up ahead," she said, pointing to a weathered 5-story apartment building with faded blue doors. "Third floor, apartment 3C. I watched her go in." Ethan studied the building through the tinted windows. The structure was a far cry from the luxurious properties Victoria had frequented during their marriage. It looked almost deliberately nondescript, the kind of place where someone might hide if they didn't want to be found. "Wait here," he instructed his driver, a stoic man who had served the Blackwood family for over a decade. "And keep an eye on the girl." "No way," Lily protested. "I'm coming with you. You wouldn't even know about this without me." Ethan hesitated, then nodded curtly. The child was right. Whatever awaited him in that building, Lily had earned the right to see it through. As they approached the entrance, Ethan's designer suit and Lily's worn clothes created a stark contrast that captured the attention of two elderly men playing chess in the small courtyard. They watched curiously as the unlikely pair entered the building. The lobby smelled of cleaning products and cooking spices. A flickering fluorescent light illuminated the worn carpet as they made their way to the stairwell, the elevator marked with an out-of-order sign. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan asked as they climbed the stairs. Each step brought him closer to either devastating disappointment or an impossible truth. He wasn't sure which terrified him more. "I'm sure," Lily replied with the unwavering confidence of youth. "She had your picture in her wallet. I saw it when she took out money to buy the sandwich." This new detail sent another jolt through Ethan. Victoria had always carried a small photo of him in her wallet, a candid shot from their second date at a jazz club in Manhattan. They reached the third floor, and Ethan paused, his heart thundering. So loudly he was certain Lily must hear it. Apartment 3C was at the end of the hallway, its door indistinguishable from the others except for a small potted fern beside it. Victoria had always kept plants, claiming they purified the energy of a space. "That's it," Lily whispered, suddenly seeming nervous. That's where she went. Ethan approached the door slowly, feeling as though he was moving through a dream. What would he do if Victoria truly was on the other side, and if not her, then who? A doppelganger, a cruel prank? Standing before the door, he raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. A year of grief, therapy sessions, sleepless nights, and vodka-soaked mornings had followed Victoria's passing. He had identified her body, buried her, mourned her. If by some miracle she was alive, what did that mean about everything he thought? He knew. "Do you want me to knock?" Lily offered, sensing his reluctance. "No," Ethan said firmly. "I'll do it." He rapped his knuckles against the wood, 3 sharp sounds that seemed to echo down the corridor. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then came the soft padding of footsteps from within. The door opened a crack secured by a chain lock. A slice of a woman's face appeared, dark hair, pale skin, and one visible eye, one emerald green eye. The eye widened in horror, and the door slammed shut immediately. "Victoria!" Ethan shouted, pounding on the door with his fist. "Victoria, open this door." "Sir, you should go," came a muffled voice from inside, a voice he would recognize anywhere, one that had haunted his dreams. For a year. "You have the wrong apartment." "Vic, please," Ethan pleaded, his voice breaking. "It's me, it's Ethan." "I told you she was real," Lily whispered, tugging at his sleeve. Inside the apartment, there was silence, then the sound of hushed voices, one belonging to Victoria, and another, higher-pitched voice he couldn't identify. "I'm not leaving," Ethan declared, loud enough to be heard through the door. "I'll stay here all night if I have to. I'll call the police. I'll buy the whole damn building. Open the door, Vic." Another moment of silence followed, then the soft sound of the chain being removed. The door opened wider, and there she stood, Victoria Eleanor Blackwood, his wife, alive and breathing before him. She was thinner than he remembered, her once designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a faded blue sweater. Her dark hair was shorter, cut in a practical bob rather than the flowing style she had favored. But her eyes, those distinctive emerald eyes that had first captivated him at a charity gala 6 years ago, were unmistakably hers. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice trembling, "how did you find me?" Before he could answer, Lily stepped forward. "I told him I saw you at the cemetery yesterday. You gave me half your sandwich." Recognition dawned in Victoria's eyes as she looked at the girl. "You followed me. I didn't realize." "You're alive," Ethan interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. He reached out a shaking hand to touch her face, needing physical confirmation that she wasn't a hallucination born of grief and desperate hope. Victoria flinched, slightly, but allowed the contact. Her skin was warm beneath his fingertips, real, alive. "How?" he demanded, emotions flooding through him in a disorienting rush. Relief, joy, betrayal, anger, all fighting for dominance. "I identified your body. I buried you. I mourned you. For a year, Victoria." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know, and I'm so sorry, Ethan. I never wanted to hurt you. I had no choice." "No choice," he repeated incredulously. "You let me believe you were dead. What could possibly justify that?" Victoria glanced nervously down the hallway. "Not here. Please, come inside." She stepped back, allowing Ethan and Lily to enter the small apartment. It was modestly furnished but clean, with second-hand furniture and a few personal touches. A vase of fresh flowers, books stacked neatly on a coffee table, a handmade quilt draped over the sofa. Nothing like the luxurious home they had shared. As the door closed behind them, Ethan noticed a backpack on the floor and small shoes by the entrance, children's shoes. "Mom, who's there?" called a young voice from another room. Ethan froze, turning to Victoria with questioning eyes. "Mom?" Victoria's face paled further. "Noah, stay in your room, honey. I'll be there in a minute." But a small figure had already appeared in the doorway to what appeared to be a bedroom, a boy of about 9 years old with dark hair and curious eyes that Ethan noticed with a shock were the same distinctive shade of green as Victoria's. "Who are they?" the boy asked, looking from Ethan to Lily with innocent curiosity. Victoria moved quickly to the child's side, placing protective hands on his shoulders. "Noah, this is Mr. Blackwood and his friend Lily. They just stopped by to talk about something important." The boy, Noah, studied Ethan with surprising intensity. "You're the man from Mum's pictures, the one she cries about." Ethan felt as though the floor had dropped out from beneath him. He looked from the child to Victoria, his mind struggling to process this new revelation. "Victoria," he said slowly, "who is this boy?" She drew a deep breath, tightening her grip on the child's shoulders. "Ethan, this is Noah, my son." The silence that followed Victoria's revelation seemed to stretch for an eternity. Ethan stared at the boy, Victoria's son, trying to make sense of the bombshell that had just detonated in his life. Noah looked back at him with innocent curiosity, completely unaware of the magnitude of the moment. "Your son," Ethan finally repeated, his voice hollow. "You have a son." Victoria nodded, gently squeezing Noah's shoulders. "Honey, why don't you and Lily go to your room for a little while? Maybe you could show her your comic books." Noah brightened at the suggestion. "I've got the whole Lunar Chronicles series. Do you like comics?" he asked Lily. The girl shrugged, looking uncertainly between the adults. "Sure, I guess. We'll be right here," Victoria assured them as Noah eagerly led Lily down the short hallway to his bedroom. Once the children were out of earshot, Victoria turned to face her husband. "Ethan, I know you must have 1,000 questions." "Questions?" he interrupted, struggling to keep his voice low. "Victoria, a questions doesn't begin to cover it. I thought you were dead. I identified your body. I've spent the last year in hell, and now I find out not only that you're alive, but you have a child I never knew about. Who is he? How old is he? Why didn't you ever tell me about him?" Victoria sank onto the worn sofa, gesturing for Ethan to sit as well. He remained standing, too agitated to sit still. "Noah is 9, she began, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. "And I've had him since before we met." "Before we met?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair in disbelief. "We were together for a year before we got married for 5 years after that. That's 6 years, Victoria. 6 years you kept this from me." "Please sit down," she implored. "Let me explain everything." Reluctantly, Ethan lowered himself into an armchair across from her, noticing how out of place his $1,000 suit looked against the faded upholstery. "I met Dwayne Parker when I was 23, Victoria began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I was fresh out of college, working as an assistant at an art gallery in New York. He was charming, successful, at least he seemed that way, and I fell for him hard and fast." Ethan's jaw tightened at the mention of another man, but he remained silent. "Things were good at first, but then they changed," Victoria continued, her voice dropping. "Dwayne had a temper and a drinking problem, and when he drank, he became violent." As she spoke, Ethan's mind flashed back to their early days together, how Victoria had flinched when he raised his voice during an argument, how she avoided certain topics, the unexplained scar on her lower back that she'd attributed to a childhood accident. "I tried to leave him several times, but he always found me, always convinced me to come back with promises and apologies." Victoria's eyes grew distant, lost in painful memories. "When I found out I was pregnant, I knew I had to get away for good. I couldn't let my child grow up in that environment." She rose and moved to a small desk in the corner, opening a drawer and retrieving a photograph. She handed it to Ethan. Much younger Victoria holding a newborn baby, her face radiating joy despite the fading bruise visible on her cheekbone. "I fled to Boston where my college roommate lived," she continued as Ethan stared at the photo. "Changed my name, got a restraining order, started over. For years we were safe. I built a life for Noah and me. Then I met you at that foundation gala, and everything changed again." Ethan remembered that night vividly. Victoria in an emerald. Gown that matched her eyes, her laughter, the instant connection between them. Why didn't you tell me about him then? Victoria's eyes met his, filled with regret. I was going to, Ethan. But then at that dinner at your parents' estate, you talked about family. You said, her voice caught, you said you'd never raise another man's child, that any children you had would carry the Blackwood name and legacy. The memory hit Ethan like a physical blow. The conversation had been about his cousin, who was adopting his new wife's children from a previous marriage. He had indeed said those words, never imagining they would lead to this moment. You took an offhand comment I made at a dinner party and used it to justify hiding your son from me for our entire relationship, he asked incredulously. I was terrified, Ethan, Victoria countered. I'd finally found safety and happiness. Noah was with a wonderful caretaker during the times I was with you. I convinced myself that keeping these parts of my life separate was protecting everyone. Then we got married and the lie just grew bigger. The longer I waited, the harder it became to tell you the truth. Ethan stood and paced the small living room, struggling to process everything. So you've been living a double life our entire marriage? How did you manage that? It wasn't easy, Victoria admitted. The business trips I took, the charity work, the weekend retreats, many of those times, I was with Noah. He thought I worked for a company that required a lot of travel. He stayed with a caretaker, a wonderful woman named Eleanor, when I was with you. Ethan stopped pacing, a new realization dawning. The accident, your death, none of it was real, was it? Victoria's eyes filled with fresh tears. No, and yes. Something did happen, Ethan, something that forced my hand. She stood and moved to the window, peering through the blinds as though checking for something or someone. The gesture sent a chill down Ethan's spine. About 14 months ago, Dwayne found me, she said quietly. All those years, and somehow he tracked me down. He saw pictures of us in the society pages, the wealthy tech CEO Ethan Blackwood and his beautiful wife. He recognized me immediately. What did he want? Ethan asked, though he already suspected the answer. Money, at first, Victoria confirmed. Lots of it. He threatened to tell you everything, to take Noah away from me. Then his demands escalated. He wanted a job at Blackwood Enterprises, connections to your investors. When I refused, he became dangerous. He said he'd hurt Noah if I didn't comply. She turned back to face Ethan, her expression haunted. I went to the police, but the restraining order had expired years ago. Without proof of new threats, there was little they could do. I was trapped, Ethan. Dwayne knew where we lived, where Noah went to school. He even followed me to our home once. That's when I knew I had to disappear, for Noah's safety and for yours. You could have told me, Ethan insisted. We could have handled it together. I have resources, security. You don't know Dwayne, Victoria interrupted. He's ruthless, unpredictable, and I couldn't risk your reaction to learning about Noah, not when we were already in danger. She moved to a small bookshelf and retrieved a manila envelope, handing it to Ethan. Inside were documents, medical records, police reports, and death certificates. I had help, she explained as he examined the papers. Dr. Helen Reynolds, my friend from medical school. She had a patient with terminal cancer who bore a striking resemblance to me. When the woman passed away, Helen helped me. Use her body to fake my death. Ethan looked up sharply. You're saying the body I identified? Victoria nodded grimly. It wasn't me. The accident was staged. The car was submerged long enough that identification would be difficult. Helen made sure the dental records matched. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I never wanted to put you through that pain, but I couldn't see another way out. Ethan sank back into the chair, the documents slipping from his fingers to scatter across the floor. The elaborate deception, the calculated planning, it was almost too much to comprehend. Where have you been this past year? He asked, his voice barely audible. Here and there, Victoria replied. We moved frequently at first, staying with friends who didn't ask too many questions. I had some savings, and Helen helps when she can. We've been in this apartment for about 3 months. It's the longest we've stayed anywhere. She knelt before him, tentatively taking his hands in hers. Yesterday was the anniversary of my death, but it was also Noah's birthday. I went to the cemetery because I needed to feel close to you, to apologize even if you couldn't hear me. I never imagined that little girl would see me, much less lead you here. From the hallway came the sound of children's laughter. Noah and Lily, oblivious to the life-altering conversation happening just feet away. Ethan looked into the emerald eyes he had thought he would never see again, searching for the woman he had married amidst all the lies and secrets. Is Dwayne still a threat? Victoria's grip on his hands tightened. Yes, he found me again last month. That's why we're in this neighborhood. I thought he wouldn't look for us somewhere so modest. But he's demanding more money, threatening to expose everything. He knows I'm not really dead. He's using that as leverage now too. A protective fury unlike anything Ethan had ever experienced surged through him. Whatever his feelings about Victoria's deception, the thought of someone threatening her and a child, even a child he had just learned existed, awakened something primal within him. Where is he now? Ethan asked, his voice hardening with resolve. I don't know, Victoria admitted. He contacts me sporadically. He's been showing up, drunk, becoming more erratic. I'm terrified, Ethan. For Noah and now for you too, since you found us. Ethan stood, helping Victoria to her feet as well. We need to get you both somewhere safe. Then we'll figure out what to do about Dwayne. Hope flickered in Victoria's eyes, quickly replaced by uncertainty. You're helping us? After everything I've done? Ethan's emotions were still a tempestuous mix of anger, betrayal, relief, and confusion. But one thing was clear. The woman he had mourned for a year was alive and in danger. Whatever reckoning lay between them would have to wait. I don't know what happens next between us, Victoria, he said honestly, but I'm not leaving you and a child in danger. Now pack whatever you need. We're leaving. The Blackwood estate in Beacon Hill stood like a fortress against the evening sky, its wrought iron gates and stone walls suddenly serving a purpose beyond mere privacy. As Ethan's Bentley pulled into the circular driveway, he noticed Victoria tense beside him, her eyes darting nervously to the back seat where Noah dozed, his head resting against Lily's shoulder. No one knows we're here except Richard, Ethan assured her, referring to his driver who had maintained a stoic silence throughout the surreal journey from Roxbury. The house has a state-of-the-art security system. You'll be safe. Victoria nodded, though her posture remained rigid. What about Lily? Her grandmother will be worried. I'll take care of it, Ethan promised. After discovering that Lily and her grandmother Rosa lived in a transitional housing facility not far from the cemetery, he had insisted they come to the estate as well. Richard will bring her grandmother here tonight. I've already arranged it. As they entered the sprawling mansion, Ethan watched Noah's eyes widen with awe. The child took in the soaring ceilings, the grand staircase, the priceless artwork that adorned the walls, all of which Ethan had stopped noticing long ago. Whoa, Noah breathed. You live in a castle. It's just a house, Ethan replied awkwardly, uncertain how to interact with this child who was simultaneously a stranger and his wife's son. Mrs. Sullivan, the housekeeper who had served the Blackwood family for over 20 years, appeared in the foyer. Her normally impassive expression faltered at the sight of Victoria, color draining from her face as though she'd seen a ghost. Mrs. Blackwood, she gasped, clutching the doorframe for support. Hello, Eleanor, Victoria said softly, using the woman's first name, something Ethan had rarely done. The familiarity struck him as odd until he remembered what Victoria had said about Noah's caretaker. You knew, he realized, looking between the two women. You've been helping her all along. Mrs. Sullivan straightened, her composure returning. I have indeed, sir, and I would do it again. The declaration held both apology and defiance. We'll discuss this later, Ethan said, too exhausted to address another betrayal. For now, please prepare 3 guest rooms and have the chef prepare something light for dinner. Right away, sir, she replied, disappearing up the stairs after a final glance at Victoria and Noah. Ethan led them to the library, a warm space with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and comfortable leather seating. It had always been Victoria's favorite room in the house, and judging by the way her shoulders relaxed slightly as they entered, that hadn't changed. Noah immediately gravitated toward the model ships displayed in a glass case, antique treasures that had belonged to Ethan's grandfather. "Cool. Are these yours?" "They were my grandfather's," Ethan replied, watching as the boy studied them with genuine interest. "He was a naval architect." "What's that?" Noah asked, looking up with curious green eyes. Victoria's eyes. "Someone who designs ships," Ethan explained, surprised to find himself moving closer to the display case. "He designed vessels for the Navy during World War II. "That's awesome," Noah declared. "I want to build things too. Mum says I'm good at it. I made a robot that actually moves last year for the science fair." Victoria smiled, the first genuine smile Ethan had seen since their reunion. "He won first place. Noah has a gift for engineering." "Like you," the boy added, looking at Ethan. "Mum says you build super advanced computers and stuff." The casual revelation that Victoria had spoken to her son about him sent a jolt through Ethan's system. While he had been drowning in grief, believing his wife gone forever, she had been telling this child about him. The thought was both comforting and infuriating. "Mrs. Sullivan will show you to your rooms," Ethan said, noticing the housekeeper had returned. "You should rest. We'll talk more at dinner." After the others had gone upstairs, Ethan remained in the library, pouring himself a generous measure of bourbon from the crystal decanter. He sank into his leather chair, the same spot where he had spent countless nights over the past year staring into the darkness, glass in hand, drowning in memories and regrets. Now those memories were called into question. The wife he had mourned was alive. The accident he had replayed in his mind thousands of times had never happened. The solitary life he had reluctantly accepted was suddenly populated by not only Victoria, but a child he never knew existed, and now a homeless girl and her grandmother. His phone buzzed, a message from Richard confirming that Rosa Martinez had been collected and was en route to the estate. The elderly woman had apparently been quite suspicious until Lily had been put on the phone to explain the situation. Even then, she had insisted on bringing what Richard described as an alarming number of religious icons and talismans for protection. Ethan drained his glass, welcoming the burn of alcohol down his throat. A year ago, his life had been perfectly ordered. His business thriving, his marriage seemingly ideal, his future clearly mapped. Now nothing made sense. He was adrift in uncharted waters without a compass. The sound of soft footsteps alerted him to Victoria's return. She stood in the doorway, having changed into clothes that must have been left behind, a simple grey sweater and black pants that hung loosely on her thinner frame. "Noah's settled in," she said. "He's showing Lily his skateboarding videos on the tablet Helen gave him for his birthday. Your housekeeper is fussing over them like a mother hen." "Our housekeeper," Ethan corrected automatically. "This is still your home, legally speaking. I never changed a thing after you were gone." Victoria's eyes swept around the library, lingering on the wedding photo Ethan had kept on the desk. "It doesn't feel like my home anymore. I gave up the right to call it that when I made my choice." "Why did you come to the cemetery yesterday?" Ethan asked, pouring another drink. "Why risk being seen after all this time?" Victoria moved further into the room but remained standing, as though unsure of her right to sit. "It was Noah's birthday, and the anniversary. I needed to... I don't know, connect with you somehow. Apologize, even if you couldn't hear me. I never thought anyone would recognize me. Except Mrs. Sullivan apparently knew all along," Ethan noted, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. "Eleanor was the only one I trusted with the truth," Victoria admitted. "She loved Noah since he was a baby. When I met you, she agreed to care for him while I was with you. After I disappeared, she helped us financially when she could, kept us updated about you." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "So she knew I was falling apart with grief, drinking myself to sleep every night, barely functioning, and still she said nothing." "I made her promise," Victoria whispered, "for Noah's safety, for yours too." "My safety?" Ethan laughed harshly. "Victoria, I'm a billionaire with resources you can't imagine. I have security personnel, lawyers, connections to law enforcement. What exactly did you think would happen if you'd told me the truth?" "I don't know," Victoria exclaimed, her composure finally cracking. "Maybe you'd reject Noah. Maybe you'd try to confront Dwayne and get hurt. Maybe you'd hate me for lying for so long. All I knew was that Dwayne was threatening my child and I was terrified. I made the only choice I could see at the time." They stared at each other across the room. 5 years of marriage and 1 year of deception stretched between them like a chasm. "Do you want me to leave?" Victoria finally asked, her voice small. "Once Rosa arrives and everyone's settled, Noah and I can go. You don't owe us anything, Ethan." The question hung in the air between them. Did he want her to leave? Part of him, the part still raw with betrayal, said yes. But another part, the part that had mourned her every day for a year, rebelled at the thought of losing her again. Before he could answer, a commotion in the foyer announced Rosa's arrival. The elderly woman's voice carried clearly, alternating between English and rapid-fire Spanish, as she apparently lectured Richard about something. "We should go greet them," Victoria suggested, visibly relieved by the interruption. Ethan nodded, setting down his glass and following her out of the library. In the foyer, a tiny woman with steel-grey hair pulled into a tight bun was gesturing emphatically with a wooden cane while Richard attempted to manage several mismatched suitcases. Lily stood nearby, looking both embarrassed and amused. "Abuela, please," the girl was saying. "Mr. Blackwood's driver was just trying to help with your bags." "Nobody touches Santa Guadalupe without permission," Rosa insisted, clutching a worn statue protectively to her chest. Her sharp eyes immediately found Victoria. "So it's true. The dead wife lives." "Mrs. Martinez," Victoria greeted her with surprising warmth. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be very strange." "Strange?" Rosa echoed, raising an eyebrow. "I live in a shelter with my granddaughter. Yesterday she follows a ghost to an apartment. Today we're invited to a mansion by a millionaire. Strange doesn't begin to cover it, Senora." "Billionaire, actually," Lily corrected with the straightforward honesty of youth. "Mr. Blackwood is a billionaire, Abuela. I told you." Rosa waved a dismissive hand. "Million, billion, it's all the same when you have nothing." She turned her penetrating gaze to Ethan. "You, the husband, what do you want with my Lily? Why bring us here?" The directness of the question caught Ethan off guard. "Your granddaughter did me a great service today, Mrs. Martinez. She deserves to be rewarded. And I couldn't leave you behind in that shelter." Rosa studied him for a long moment, then nodded once, apparently satisfied. "Good. Now where is this boy Lily told me about? The secret son?" "Abuela," Lily hissed, mortified. "Noah is upstairs," Victoria answered, seemingly unfazed by the woman's bluntness. "Would you like to meet him? We'll be having dinner soon." As Victoria led Rosa upstairs, with Lily trailing behind them, Ethan found himself alone in the foyer with Richard. The driver had worked for him for over a decade, maintaining a professional distance that bordered on invisibility. Now, for the first time, Ethan saw uncertainty in the man's usually impassive face. "Sir," Richard began cautiously, "I feel I should inform you that I've taken the liberty of increasing security around the perimeter, given the unusual circumstances." Ethan nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Richard. That's good thinking. And, sir," the driver continued, lowering his voice, "if I may speak freely, it's good to see Mrs. Blackwood again, despite the circumstances." With that simple statement, Richard touched his cap and departed, leaving Ethan to ponder the strange new reality taking shape around him. Within the span of a few hours, his empty mausoleum of a home had become filled with voices, with life, chaotic and complicated, but undeniably alive. He climbed the stairs slowly, following the sound of conversation to one of the guest rooms. Pausing in the doorway, he observed the scene within. Noah enthusiastically showing Rosa something on his tablet, the elderly woman nodding with exaggerated interest. Victoria and Lily sat on the edge of the bed, the girl demonstrating some kind of hand game that involved complicated patterns and rhythmic clapping. They looked like a family, not his family, not the one he had imagined having with Victoria, but a family nonetheless. And as Noah looked up and spotted him, Flashing a hesitant smile that revealed a missing front tooth, Ethan felt something unexpected stir within him. Not acceptance, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Dinner. That evening was unlike any Ethan had experienced in his home before. The formal dining room with its mahogany table that could seat 20 had always seemed appropriately grand for business dinners and social gatherings. Now, with just 5 people scattered along one end, it felt absurdly oversized. Mrs. Sullivan had prepared a simple meal: roast chicken, vegetables, and fresh bread, served on the Blackwood family's finest china. The contrast between the elegant setting and their unusual dinner party wasn't lost on anyone, least of all Noah, who kept looking around in wonder. "Do you eat like this every day?" the boy asked Ethan, his fork poised mid-air. "Not exactly," Ethan replied. "I usually eat in my office." "That's sad," Noah declared with the brutal honesty of childhood. "Mom says meals should be shared with people you love." An awkward silence followed, broken only by Rosa muttering something in Spanish that made Lily nudge her with an elbow. "This chicken is really good," Lily offered, clearly attempting to smooth over the moment. "Indeed," Ethan agreed, grateful. For the diversion, "Mrs. Sullivan is an excellent cook." Victoria sat quietly, picking at her food and occasionally glancing toward the windows, as if expecting to see someone watching from the darkness. Her anxiety was palpable, infecting the atmosphere despite the sumptuous surroundings. "You're safe here," Ethan assured her, noticing her unease. "The security system was upgraded last month. No one gets in without authorization." Victoria nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "It's not just about physical safety, Ethan. Dwayne is persistent, and now that we're here with you, he'll be furious when he discovers it." "Let him be," Ethan replied with cold certainty. "I've already spoken with my security team. They're doing background checks, tracking his whereabouts. By morning, we'll know everything about him, where he lives, his finances, his weaknesses." "You don't understand," Victoria insisted. "He's unpredictable, especially when he's been drinking. And he has nothing to lose." Rosa set down her fork with a sharp clink against fine china. "This man, he hurts you before, physically?" Victoria hesitated, glancing at Noah, who was watching the conversation with wide eyes. "We shouldn't discuss this now." "I know about Dad," Noah said quietly. "I know he wasn't nice to you, that's why we left New York." Ethan felt a strange twist in his chest at hearing the boy refer to another man as Dad. It was irrational. He had only just learned of Noah's existence, had no claim to any paternal role in his life, yet something possessive and protective awoke within him. "Your father won't hurt your mother again," Ethan promised, surprising himself with the vehemence in his voice. "Or you. I'll make sure of it." Noah studied him thoughtfully. "How? Are you stronger than him? He's really big." "There are different kinds of strength," Ethan explained, choosing his words carefully. "I have resources, people who work for me, legal options. Lawyers and money," Rosa translated bluntly. "That's good. Better than fists." After dinner, the children were escorted upstairs by Mrs. Sullivan for baths and bedtime, while the adults gathered in Ethan's study. Victoria paced nervously by the window, while Rosa settled herself regally in an armchair, clutching her ever-present statue of Saint Guadalupe. "We need a plan," Ethan stated, accessing his laptop. "Tomorrow I'll have my legal team prepare restraining orders. We'll document Dwayne's threats, his history of violence." "That won't stop him," Victoria interrupted. "We've been down this road before. Papers and judges' orders mean nothing to a man like Dwayne." "Then we'll get ahead of the situation," Ethan continued, his mind working with the same methodical precision that had built his tech empire. "My security team will—" He was interrupted by the harsh buzz of the estate's intercom. Richard's voice came through the speaker on Ethan's desk. "Sir, there's a situation at the main gate. A man is demanding entry, claiming he's looking for Mrs. Blackwood. He appears intoxicated and is becoming aggressive." Victoria froze, her face draining of color. "It's him. How did he find us so quickly?" Ethan pressed the intercom button. "Security camera feed to my monitor now." The large screen on the wall of his study flickered to life, showing the estate's wrought iron gates. A man stood on the other side, swaying slightly as he jabbed a finger at the intercom panel. Even through the grainy night vision footage, his belligerence was evident. "That's Dwayne," Victoria confirmed, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan studied the man who had caused Victoria such fear. Dwayne Parker was tall and powerfully built, with the physique of someone who had once been athletic, but had succumbed to years of hard living. His face was flushed, his movements erratic, clearly intoxicated, as Richard had noted. "Call the police," Rosa suggested. "Have him arrested for trespassing." "And then what?" Victoria asked. "He'll be released by morning, even more angry. He'll just keep coming back." On the screen, Dwayne was now shouting, though the exterior audio wasn't activated. He slammed his fist against the gate, then pulled out what appeared to be a cell phone. Victoria's own phone buzzed moments later. She looked at the screen and shuddered. "It's him. He's calling me." "Answer it," Ethan instructed, moving to her side. "Put it on speaker. Let's hear what he wants." With trembling fingers, Victoria accepted the call. Dwayne's voice immediately filled the room, slurred but menacing. "I know you're in there, Victoria. With your rich husband who's supposed to be grieving your death. How touching." "How did you find me?" Victoria asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. Dwayne laughed, the sound ugly and harsh. "You think I don't keep tabs on you? I saw that fancy car pull up to your apartment today. Wasn't hard to figure out where it came from. The great Ethan Blackwood, reunited with his not-so-dead wife." "What do you want, Dwayne?" Ethan interjected, placing a supportive hand on Victoria's shoulder. There was a pause, then Dwayne's voice returned, colder now. "Ah, the man himself. Finally we meet, sort of. What I want is simple. Money. Let's say 5 million. Cash. Then I disappear forever and your little secret stays safe." "What secret?" Ethan asked. "That my wife is alive. That's hardly a secret worth $5 million. "No," Dwayne challenged. "How about the fact that she committed insurance fraud? That she used a corpse to fake her death? That your precious Victoria is actually a criminal? I wonder what the press would make of that, not to mention the police." Ethan felt Victoria tense beneath his hand. Dwayne's threats were not idle. The legal implications of Victoria's deception could indeed be severe. "Come inside," Ethan said, making a split-second decision. "We'll discuss terms." "Ethan, no," Victoria protested, but he silenced her with a look. "Richard," he spoke into the intercom. "Let Mr. Parker through the gate. Escort him to the house, with security, of course." "Are you sure, sir?" came the driver's concerned response. "I'm sure. And activate audio recording in the study. Document everything." As Richard acknowledged the order, Ethan turned to Victoria and Rosa. "I need you both to go upstairs, check on the children, keep them there no matter what you hear." "What are you going to do?" Victoria demanded, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm going to end this," Ethan replied simply. "Tonight." After Victoria reluctantly left with Rosa, Ethan moved to his desk and opened a drawer, removing a small recording device. He placed it beneath a book on the coffee table, then poured 2 glasses of bourbon and waited. Minutes later, heavy footsteps announced Dwayne's arrival. The man who entered the study was even more imposing in person, his bulk filling the doorway as he shrugged off Richard's guiding hand. "Nice place," Dwayne commented, his bloodshot eyes taking in the opulent surroundings. No wonder Victoria wanted to trade up. "Please sit." Ethan gestured to a chair across from his desk, maintaining a calm he didn't entirely feel. Dwayne dropped heavily into the offered seat, immediately reaching for one of the bourbon glasses. "So you're the billionaire, the grieving widower who just discovered his wife's been playing him for a fool. And you're the abusive ex who's been terrorizing a woman and child for over a decade," Ethan replied evenly. "I think we understand each other." Dwayne's face darkened. "Watch yourself, Blackwood. You don't know who you're dealing with." "Actually, I do," Ethan countered, tapping a key on his laptop. The screen on the wall changed to display a series of documents. Dwayne Michael Parker, born September 3rd, 1985 in Newark, New Jersey. 2 convictions for assault, 1 for driving under the influence. currently unemployed with outstanding debts totaling over $90,000, including child support payments to 2 different women in New Jersey. Dwayne's surprise was quickly masked by a sneer. "You had me investigated, impressive, but it doesn't change the fact that I hold all the cards here." "Do you?" Ethan challenged, leaning forward. "Let's be clear about something, Mr. Parker. I could write you a check for $5 million right now and it wouldn't make a dent in my net worth. But I won't, because men like you don't disappear. You'll be back for more, again and again." "You don't have a choice," Dwayne growled, "unless you want your wife in prison and your precious reputation ruined." Ethan smiled thinly. "That's where you're wrong. I always have choices. For instance, I could have my legal team bury you in lawsuits, harassment, extortion, endangerment. Of a minor, with your record, you'd be looking at serious time." "You got nothing on me," Dwayne scoffed, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "No?" Ethan pressed a button on his desk phone. "Send in the file, please." The study door opened and Richard entered, carrying a thick folder which he placed on Ethan's desk before departing silently. "This contains every threat you've made against Victoria and Noah over the past 10 years, Ethan explained, opening the folder to reveal pages of printed text messages, emails, and handwritten notes. "Every instance of stalking, every violation of the restraining order she originally had against you. Mrs. Sullivan has been quite thorough in documenting everything." Dwayne's confidence visibly wavered. "That's all in the past. You can't prove." "I don't need to prove anything in court," Ethan interrupted. "Though I certainly could. What I need is for you to understand the situation you're in." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "You came here tonight to threaten and extort me. Every word of this conversation is being recorded. Every movement is on camera. And outside this room are 4 members of my security team, all former military, who would be very interested to know why you have an unregistered firearm tucked into your waistband." Dwayne instinctively touched his side, where indeed the outline of a handgun was visible beneath his jacket. "Here's what's going to happen," Ethan continued, his voice cold and precise. "You're going to leave here tonight and never contact Victoria or Noah again. You will sign legal documents relinquishing any claim to Noah. Not that you have any legal claim, given that you've never paid a cent in child support. In return, I will provide you with a one-time payment of $100,000 to clear your debts, on the condition that you relocate to a different state." "100,000? Dwayne laughed incredulously. "That's your offer. I want $5 million. "This isn't a negotiation," Ethan clarified. "It's the only option that doesn't end with you in prison. Think carefully, Mr. Parker. A man with your history won't fare well in the system, especially when the prosecutor has evidence of attempted extortion against one of the wealthiest men in Massachusetts." The threat hung in the air between them. Dwayne's face contorted with rage, his hand inching toward his concealed weapon. "You think you can threaten me? I could end you right now." "You could try," Ethan acknowledged calmly. "But as I mentioned, we're being recorded. And my security team is monitoring this conversation. You wouldn't make it out of this room." For a tense moment, Ethan thought Dwayne might actually draw the gun. Then, from the doorway, came a young voice. "Leave them alone." Both men turned to see Lily standing in the doorway, her small frame vibrating with anger. Behind her, Victoria appeared, reaching for the girl with panic in her eyes. "Lily, no! Go back upstairs," Victoria pleaded. But the girl stood her ground, fixing Dwayne, with a glare that belied her 11 years. "I heard everything. You're a bully who hurts people smaller than you. My abuela says men like you are cowards." Dwayne's face flushed with anger. "Get this brat out of here before you what?" Lily challenged, stepping further into the room despite Victoria's attempts to hold her back. "Hit a kid? Like, you probably hit Noah's mom? I already called the police. They're on their way right now." Ethan saw the flash of alarm in Dwayne's eyes. The man's hand moved definitively toward his weapon, but before he could draw it, Richard and 2 security guards appeared behind Lily and Victoria. "Sir," Richard addressed Ethan calmly, "the police are indeed on their way. Ms. Martinez used the emergency phone in the upstairs hallway." Dwayne's posture changed instantly, his hand dropping away from the concealed gun. "This is bullshit. I'm leaving." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Ethan replied, standing. "You'll wait here for the police to arrive. They'll be very interested in that unregistered firearm you're carrying, especially given your prior convictions." As if on cue, distant sirens became audible, growing louder. By the second, Dwayne's face cycled through rage, panic, and finally defeat. "You'll regret this, Blackwood," he threatened, though the words lacked conviction now. "All of you." "No, Mr. Parker," Ethan countered. "The only one with regrets here is you." The security guards moved in, positioning themselves on either side of Dwayne. Though they didn't touch him, their presence made it clear he had no avenue of escape. Lily stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. "My abuela says bad people only have power when good people are afraid. We're not afraid of you anymore." In that moment, looking at this brave child who had risked herself to protect relative strangers, Ethan felt a surge of admiration, unlike anything he'd experienced before. Lily had done what Victoria had been unable to do for years, stand up to the man who had terrorized her, and she'd done it without wealth, without power, armed only with courage and a fierce sense of justice. Victoria moved to Lily's side, placing protective arms around the girl's shoulders as blue and red lights flashed through the study windows. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Thank you for being braver than I ever was." As the police entered the estate grounds, Ethan caught Lily's eye and gave her a nod of profound respect. The girl who had brought his wife back from the dead had now helped free her from the prison of fear she'd lived in for over a decade. Outside, the night was broken by the sounds of authority, police radios, official voices, the metallic click of handcuffs. Inside, in the sudden quiet of the study, something new was being born from the ashes of secrets and lies. The first fragile strands of trust, woven together by the unlikeliest of hands. Dawn broke over the Blackwood estate, painting the manicured gardens in hues of gold and amber. Ethan stood at the window of his study, watching the early morning light chase away the shadows of the tumultuous night. He hadn't slept. Too many thoughts swirling through his mind, too many emotions churning beneath his carefully composed exterior. After Dwayne's arrest for illegal possession of a firearm, attempted extortion, and violation of an emergency restraining order that Ethan's lawyer had somehow secured within hours, the house had gradually settled into an uneasy quiet. The children had finally been coaxed back to bed. Rosa had stationed herself in the hallway between their rooms like a vigilant guardian, and Victoria had retreated to the guest room she'd been assigned, her face a mask of exhaustion and unspoken fears. Ethan had remained in his study, making calls, pulling strings, ensuring that Dwayne Parker would remain in custody. By morning, he had set in motion a legal machinery that would keep Victoria and Noah safe, regardless of what happened between him and his not-so-dead wife. A soft knock at the door drew his attention away from the sunrise. Victoria stood in the doorway, looking somehow both familiar and like a stranger. She had changed into a simple white blouse and jeans, clothes from her previous life that still hung in their shared closet, preserved like artifacts in a museum of grief. "You didn't come to bed," she observed, then immediately flushed at the implication of intimacy in her words. "I mean, I just noticed your bedroom door was open, the bed untouched." "I had things to take care of," Ethan replied, gesturing vaguely at the papers scattered across his desk. "Legal matters, security arrangements." Victoria nodded, venturing further into the room. "The police called. Dwayne's being held without bail, at least for now. Your lawyer is very effective. Marcus has handled the Blackwood family's legal matters for 3 generations," Ethan said. "He's discreet and thorough." An awkward silence stretched between them, filled with a year's worth of unspoken words. Through the open window came the distant sounds of life. Birds greeting the morning, sprinklers activating on the lawn, the faint hum of a gardener's utility vehicle somewhere on the grounds. "Noah asked about you at breakfast," Victoria finally said. "He wants to know if you're angry with him." Ethan turned sharply. "With him? Why would I be angry with him?" "Children often blame themselves," Victoria explained, perching tentatively on the edge of a leather chair. Especially when adults are upset around them. He knows you're angry with me, and he's worried it extends to him too. Ethan moved away from the window, sinking into the chair behind his desk. I don't know what I am, Victoria. Angry, yes, confused, hurt, relieved. It's all mixed together in ways I can't untangle yet. I understand, she said softly. And for what it's worth, I am sorry, Ethan. Not for protecting Noah, but for the pain I caused you. I never wanted that. Yet you let me believe you were dead for a year, he countered, unable to keep the edge from his voice. Do you have any idea what that was like? Planning your funeral, sorting through your belongings, waking up every morning to the realization that you were gone. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I do, actually, because I went through the same thing. Every day I mourned the life we had, the man I loved, the future we'd planned. The difference was that I had to do it while knowing you were alive, but unreachable. That in some ways was worse than grief. It was like standing outside a window watching a feast you can't join. Her words hit him with unexpected force. He had been so focused on his own pain that he hadn't considered what the year had been like for her. Living in hiding, constantly afraid. Watching her son grow up in poverty when she had once known luxury. What happens now? He asked, the question encompassing far more than he could articulate. Victoria sighed, brushing away tears. I don't know. Legally, I'm still your wife. But I'd understand if you wanted a divorce after everything I've done. The word divorce hung in the air between them, heavy with finality. Ethan had considered it during his sleepless night. The clean break, the fresh start, the logical conclusion to a marriage built on deception. But something had stopped him from calling Marcus about it, some stubborn ember of feeling that refused to be extinguished. I think, he said carefully, that we need time. I can't just pick up where we left off, Victoria. Too much has happened, too many lies. She nodded, accepting his words without protest. And Noah, what about him? That was the more complicated question. The boy was innocent in all this, yet his existence represented the greatest deception in their marriage. I'd like to get to know him, Ethan found himself saying. Properly. He seems like a good kid. For the first time since their reunion, a genuine smile transformed Victoria's face. He's brilliant and kind and so resilient. You should see his science projects. He's built robots and solar-powered cars, all with recycled parts because that's all we could afford. As she spoke about her son, their son, no, not yet, Ethan saw glimpses of the woman he had fallen in love with. The passion, the warmth, the quiet strength that had drawn him to her at that foundation gala 6 years ago. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of skateboard wheels on hardwood floors, followed by Mrs. Sullivan's scandalized exclamation. Moments later, Noah appeared in the doorway, his face flushed with excitement and exertion. Mom, Mr. Blackwood, you have to see this. He was practically bouncing with enthusiasm. There's a workshop in the basement with all these tools and computers and stuff. Can I use it, please? Ethan blinked in surprise. The workshop had been his sanctuary during the darkest days of his grief, a place where he could lose himself, in the precise, logical world of engineering that had made his fortune. He hadn't expected anyone else to discover it, much less show interest. Noah, honey, I'm sure Mr. Blackwood doesn't want, Victoria began. It's fine, Ethan interrupted, finding himself oddly moved by the boy's excitement. You can use the workshop, but there are rules, safety protocols. Noah's face lit up. I know about safety. Mom taught me. Always wear goggles, never touch power tools without adult supervision, keep the workspace clean. Victoria looked between them, a complicated emotion playing across her features. Noah has always been interested in engineering, like you. Like his mother, too, Ethan pointed out. You were the top structural engineer at your firm before we met. It was a career Victoria had abandoned after their marriage, ostensibly, to focus on charitable work. Now Ethan wondered if the real reason had been to maintain her double life, to have the flexibility to spend time with her hidden son. Maybe we could go down there together? Noah suggested tentatively. You could show me how everything works if you're not too busy, he added quickly, as if expecting rejection. Ethan hesitated. The workshop was deeply personal, filled with projects that had kept him sane during his darkest hours. Sharing it felt like an intimacy he wasn't sure he was ready for. But looking at Noah's hopeful expression, he found himself nodding. I'd like that, he said, surprised to discover he meant it. I'm working on a prototype for a new kind of solar battery. You might find it interesting. Noah's smile could have powered the entire house. Awesome. Can we go now, please? Breakfast first, Victoria interjected firmly, and you need to thank Mrs. Sullivan for setting up your room so nicely. Already did, Noah assured her. She gave me extra pancakes because I helped her unload the dishwasher. Ethan couldn't help but smile at the boy's obvious attempt to be helpful. Go finish your breakfast. I'll meet you in the workshop in 30 minutes. As Noah dashed off, skateboard tucked under his arm, Victoria regarded Ethan with a mix of gratitude and caution. You don't have to do this, you know. He'll understand if you need space. I want to, Ethan replied, somewhat surprised by his own sincerity. He deserves a chance to... He trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. To know his stepfather, Victoria suggested gently. The word stepfather landed awkwardly between them. It was technically accurate, but felt both presumptuous and inadequate to describe the complex relationship forming between Ethan and Noah. To know me, Ethan corrected. And for me to know him. The rest, we'll figure out as we go. Victoria nodded, accepting this incremental step towards something that wasn't quite forgiveness, but was no longer purely anger. As she turned to leave, Ethan remembered the other occupants of his suddenly crowded home. What about Lily and her grandmother? How are they settling in? A smile touched Victoria's lips. Rosa has already reorganized the kitchen pantry according to some system only she understands. Mrs. Sullivan is both horrified and impressed. And Lily. Lily spent the morning explaining to Noah why his comic books are, in her words, totally unrealistic about how actual poor people live. Ethan laughed. A genuine laugh, his first in what felt like a lifetime. She's something else, that girl. She saved us, Victoria said softly, all of us. The truth of that statement hung in the air between them. Without Lily's chance encounter at the cemetery, without her courage in confronting Dwayne, none of them would be where they were now, standing on the precipice of possibility rather than trapped in prisons of their own making. I want to help. Them, Ethan decided. Rosa mentioned they've been in transitional housing. They deserve better. She's very proud, Victoria cautioned. She won't accept charity. Then we'll make it something else, Ethan determined. A job for Rosa, perhaps. And education for Lily. She's clearly bright. Victoria's expression softened. That's the Ethan I remember, always finding solutions. The comment might have stung just hours earlier, a reminder of the man she had deceived. Now it felt like recognition of something fundamental that remained. True despite everything that had changed. Later that morning, Ethan found himself in the basement workshop, explaining the principles of battery storage to an attentive Noah. The boy absorbed information like a sponge, asking insightful questions that sometimes caught Ethan off guard with their perception. So the problem is efficiency versus cost, Noah summarized after Ethan explained his current challenge. Exactly, Ethan confirmed, impressed. The most efficient materials are too expensive for mass production. I'm trying to develop an alternative that's affordable enough to make a real impact. Noah considered this, absently spinning a screwdriver between his fingers. What about recycled materials? My science teacher says there's valuable metals in old electronics that just get thrown away. The suggestion was simplistic, but not without merit. Ethan found himself explaining the complexities of material recovery, surprised by how easily he fell into the role of teacher, and how satisfying it felt when Noah's eyes lit up with understanding. They were deep in discussion when Lily appeared, at the workshop door, watching them with a mixture of curiosity and something else, perhaps longing. Mrs. Sullivan says lunch is ready, she announced. She seems pretty serious about mealtimes. She is, Ethan confirmed, setting down his tools. Mrs. Sullivan runs this house with military precision. Your house is weird, Lily declared as they headed upstairs. It's like a museum where people also live. Our apartment at the shelter is tiny, but at least it feels like people actually touch stuff. Ethan considered this assessment as they walked. The Blackwood estate had always been a showcase, designed to impress rather than comfort. Even before Victoria's apparent death, it had never truly felt like a home. Maybe it could use some changes, he conceded. More lived in. Definitely, Lily agreed. Also, your security guys confiscated my abuela's sage. She needs it for cleansing the energy or something. She's pretty mad. Ethan made a mental note to speak with his security team about respecting cultural practices. I'll make sure she gets it back. Lunch was served in the garden conservatory, a light affair of sandwiches and fresh fruit that nonetheless felt like a feast compared to what Victoria, Noah, Lily, and Rosa had been accustomed to recently. As they ate, Ethan observed the dynamics around the table. Rosa fussed over both children equally, muttering in Spanish about them being too thin. Victoria seemed more relaxed than earlier, some of the haunted look leaving her eyes as she watched Noah animatedly describe the workshop to Lily. The girl listened with genuine interest, occasionally interjecting with practical questions that revealed her street-smart perspective. It struck Ethan that in less than 24 hours, his empty, silent mansion had transformed into something vibrant and alive. The change was jarring, but not entirely unwelcome. After lunch, as the children disappeared to explore the grounds under Mrs. Sullivan's watchful eye, Ethan found Rosa on the terrace, staring out at the manicured gardens with an unreadable expression. "Is everything satisfactory with your accommodations, Mrs. Martinez?" he inquired formally. Rosa turned to him, her sharp eyes assessing. "The room is bigger than our entire apartment. The bed is too soft. But yes, it is satisfactory." "Good," Ethan nodded. "I wanted to discuss your situation. If you'd be comfortable, I'd like to help you and Lily find more permanent housing." Rosa's back straightened, pride evident in her posture. "We don't need charity, Mr. Blackwood." "I understand," Ethan assured her, "but perhaps we could come to a mutually beneficial arrangement. I understand you were a teacher in Puerto Rico before you came to Boston." Surprise flickered across the elderly woman's face. "Yes, mathematics, for 30 years. Lily mentioned you've been helping her with schoolwork, despite the challenges of your living situation," Ethan continued. "That speaks to your dedication as an educator and a grandmother." Rosa nodded cautiously, uncertain where this was leading. "I serve on the board of the Blackwood Academy, a private school founded by my grandfather," Ethan explained. "They've been looking for a mathematics tutor for their after-school program. The position comes with faculty housing on campus, small but comfortable, and Lily would be welcome as a student, on full scholarship, of course." Rosa studied him suspiciously. "This position, it is real, not invented for charity?" "Completely real," Ethan assured her. "The previous tutor retired last spring. The position has been vacant since then." It wasn't entirely true. The position had been filled temporarily by another teacher, but Ethan had no doubt the school would accommodate his request. The Blackwood name still carried significant weight, especially when backed by generous donations. Rosa was silent for a long moment, dignity warring with practicality. Finally, she gave a single, decisive nod. "I will consider it, for Lily's education, but I must see this school first, meet the people, make sure it is good for her." "Of course," Ethan agreed, respecting her caution. "We can visit tomorrow, if that suits you." As Rosa excused herself to rest, Ethan remained on the terrace, contemplating the strange turn his life had taken. A week ago, he had been a grieving widower, isolated in his wealth and success. Now he was, what exactly? A husband again? A potential stepfather? A benefactor to a homeless girl and her grandmother? The roles felt foreign, ill-fitting, like clothes borrowed from someone else's closet. Yet as he watched Lily and Noah racing across the lawn, their laughter carrying on the afternoon breeze, something loosened in his chest. A tightness he had carried for so long he'd forgotten it wasn't natural. Later that evening, after the children had been put to bed, Ethan found Victoria in the library, running her fingers along the spines of books she had once arranged herself. She looked up as he entered, a question in her eyes. "Noah's asleep," she reported. "He's exhausted but happy. He couldn't stop talking about the workshop, about you." Ethan nodded, moving to the bar cart to pour himself a small measure of bourbon. "He's a remarkable boy. You've done well with him, Victoria, despite everything." She accepted the compliment with a small smile. "It hasn't been easy, but he's always been my North Star, the reason to keep going, to stay strong." Ethan took a seat in his usual chair, watching as Victoria continued to move around the room, reacquainting herself with a space that had once been among her favorites in the house. "I spoke with Marcus today," he said after a moment, "about your legal situation." Victoria froze, her back to him. "And?" "The insurance fraud is problematic," Ethan admitted, "but not insurmountable. The policy was in my name, and I'm not pressing charges. As for the falsification of death records, Marcus believes we can make a case based on duress and fear for your safety and Noah's." Victoria turned slowly to face him, disbelief written across her features. "You're helping me? Legally?" "Did you think I wouldn't?" Ethan asked, genuinely curious. "I thought—" Victoria hesitated. "I thought you might want to punish me for the deception, for the pain I caused you." Ethan considered this, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "A part of me did, maybe still does, but punishing you would punish Noah too, and that boy has done nothing wrong." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Ethan, for being a better person than I feared, than I deserved." "I haven't forgiven you," he clarified, needing to be honest. "Not yet. That will take time." "I know," she whispered, "but you're trying. That's more than I had any right to hope for." 3 months passed, bringing with them the first whispers of winter to Boston. The Blackwood estate, once a monument to solitary grief, had transformed in ways Ethan could never have imagined on that fateful October day in Mount Auburn Cemetery. The most obvious changes were physical. The formal dining room with its imposing mahogany table had been replaced by a brighter space featuring a round table that encouraged conversation rather than distance. The pristine white sofas in the living room now bore the occasional smudge of chocolate or crayon, battle scars, from a house that had learned to prioritize life over perfection. Less visible but more profound were the changes within the mansion's residents. Victoria moved with greater confidence now, the haunted look gradually fading from her eyes as legal proceedings against Dwayne Parker progressed. Her ex-partner had been denied bail, deemed a flight risk and danger to the community, with multiple charges pending, including attempted extortion, illegal firearms possession, and violation of restraining orders. He faced years in prison. Noah had blossomed in the stable environment, his natural intelligence nurtured by access to education, and resources his mother had never been able to provide before. The workshop in the basement had become a shared sanctuary for him and Ethan, where complex discussions about engineering principles often evolved into deeper conversations about life, family, and identity. Lily and Rosa had moved into faculty, housing at Blackwood Academy 6 weeks earlier, though they remained frequent visitors to the estate. Rosa had taken to her position as mathematics tutor with formidable energy, quickly becoming beloved by students for her no-nonsense approach and genuine concern for their progress. Lily, initially resistant to the structure of private school, had discovered a passion for debate and writing that surprised everyone except her grandmother. As for Ethan himself, the transformation had been the most unexpected. The rigid, grief-hardened shell he had constructed around himself had gradually cracked open, allowing warmth and purpose to flow back into his life. He had reduced his hours at Blackwood Enterprises, delegating more responsibility to his executive team in favor of time spent at home. The Singapore expansion had been put on indefinite hold. Some opportunities, he had realized, weren't worth the personal cost. On this particular evening, the house was unusually quiet. Mrs. Sullivan had taken the night off to visit her sister in Providence. Victoria was working in the study, finalizing details for the reopening of the Blackwood Family Foundation, which she would once again co-chair with Ethan. Noah was spending the weekend at a science camp in the Berkshires, his first overnight trip since the family's reunion. Ethan stood in his bedroom, adjusting his tie before the mirror. The reflection that stared back at him was different from the haunted man who had occupied this space just months ago. The lines of grief remained etched around his eyes, but they were softer now, balanced by newer lines formed from unexpected laughter and genuine smiles. A soft knock at the door preceded Victoria's entrance. She wore a simple emerald dress that matched her eyes, her hair styled in elegant waves, reminiscent of how she had worn it when they first met. For a moment, Ethan was transported back to that foundation gala, to the instant connection that had sparked between them across a crowded room. "You look beautiful," he said, the words escaping before he could consider them. Victoria smiled, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Thank you. It feels strange dressing up again. Being me again, I suppose." The comment carried layers of meaning. For the past year, Victoria had lived as someone else, a shadow of herself, defined by fear and necessity rather than choice and joy. The journey back to her true identity had been complicated by legal proceedings, public curiosity, and the delicate process of rebuilding trust within her marriage. "The car will be here in 20 minutes, Ethan informed her, checking his watch. "Marcus said the judge is punctual, so we shouldn't be late." Victoria nodded, her expression turning serious. "Are you sure about this, Ethan? Completely sure. It's a big step." He crossed the room to stand before her, taking her hands in his. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Today marked the culmination of weeks of legal work, countless discussions, and deep soul-searching. They were headed to a private hearing with Judge Caroline Winters, who would finalize the adoption papers, making Lily legally part of the Blackwood family. The process for Noah would follow a different path. Legal proceedings to formally recognize Ethan as his stepfather were already underway, with Dwayne having relinquished all parental rights as part of his plea agreement. "I keep thinking about how it all happened," Victoria mused as they descended the grand staircase together. "If Lily hadn't seen me at the cemetery that day, if she hadn't been brave enough to speak to you, so as if you hadn't shared your sandwich with her," Ethan added, recalling how such a small act of kindness had set in motion the reunion that changed all their lives. "It's strange, isn't it? How the smallest decisions can alter everything." Victoria paused at the bottom of the stairs, turning to face him. "When I decided to fake my death, I thought I was protecting Noah, protecting you. I never imagined there could be another way forward, one where we could all be safe together." Ethan studied her face, the face he had mourned, had memorialized in photographs throughout their home, had eventually believed he would never see again, except in dreams. "We still have a long way to go," he reminded her gently. "Trust takes time to rebuild." "I know," she acknowledged, "but we're getting there, aren't we?" The question held vulnerability that Victoria rarely allowed herself to show. In response, Ethan reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "I had planned to give you this after the hearing," he said, opening the box to reveal a pendant, an emerald surrounded by diamonds, suspended on a platinum chain. "But perhaps now is the right moment." Victoria's breath caught as she recognized the piece. "The Blackwood emerald, your mother's pendant." "I bought it from the family collection before your birthday last year," Ethan explained. "Before everything. It's been in the safe all this time." The significance wasn't lost on Victoria. The pendant was a family heirloom, traditionally given to the Blackwood bride who would continue the family legacy. That Ethan had purchased it for her before her death spoke to the depth of his commitment then. That he was giving it to her, now after everything, spoke volumes more. "I can't accept this," she whispered, though her fingers hovered longingly over the gleaming stone. "Not yet. Not until you truly forgive me." Ethan took the pendant from its velvet nest and moved behind her. "Forgiveness isn't a destination, Victoria. It's a journey we're already on." As he fastened the chain around her neck, his fingers brushed against her skin. a simple touch that carried echoes of intimacy they were slowly reclaiming. The emerald nestled just below the hollow of her throat, catching the light like a captured star. "It matches your eyes," Ethan observed, his voice low. "Just as I knew it would." Victoria turned to face him, tears glistening in those remarkable eyes. "I don't deserve this. Any of this." "It's not about deserving," Ethan replied, wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "It's about choosing. Every day we choose who we want to be, what kind of life we want to build. I'm choosing this life, Victoria. With you, with Noah, with Lily, our unconventional, complicated, beautiful family." The moment was interrupted by the discreet chime of Ethan's phone. The car had arrived. Together, they stepped out into the crisp November evening, the future stretching before them like an unwritten story. The courthouse was quiet, most of the day's proceedings having concluded hours earlier. Judge Winters, a distinguished woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a reputation for fairness, welcomed them into her chambers, where Rosa and Lily were already waiting. Lily wore a navy blue dress that had been carefully selected during a shopping trip with Victoria the previous weekend. Her hair was arranged in neat braids, and she sat with uncharacteristic stillness, her usual exuberance contained by the solemnity of the occasion. "Are you ready, young lady?" Judge Winters asked her with a gentle smile. Lily nodded, her eyes darting to Ethan and Victoria for reassurance. "Yes, Your Honor." The adoption proceedings were brief, but deeply moving. As Judge Winters read the official declaration making Lily Martinez Blackwood legally their daughter, Ethan felt Victoria's hand tighten around his. They had discussed this moment extensively, the responsibilities they were assuming, the commitment they were making to a child who had entered their lives through extraordinary circumstances. "By the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts," Judge Winters concluded, "I hereby declare this adoption complete and legally binding." She handed Lily a small gavel and invited her to strike the sound block, making the adoption official. The sharp crack of wood against wood echoed in the chamber, punctuating the moment when their lives officially, legally intertwined. Rosa, who had supported the adoption with characteristic pragmatism, "The girl needs stability and you two need redemption. It's a fair trade," wiped away uncharacteristic tears as she embraced her granddaughter, now officially her great-granddaughter. "You will always be my Lily," she whispered fiercely in the girl's ear. "No matter what papers say, no matter what name you carry." "I know, Abuela," Lily assured her. "But now I have you and them. More people to love me is better than fewer, right?" The simple wisdom of her statement struck Ethan with unexpected force. More people to love. Wasn't that the essence of what they had all found in each other? Not replacement, but expansion. Not substitution, but addition. Later that evening, after a celebration dinner at Lily and Rosa's favorite restaurant in the North End, they returned to the Blackwood estate. Lily had insisted on staying the night, eager to arrange her personal belongings in the room that had gradually evolved from a guest space to her own personalized domain, decorated with a blend of her previous life and new opportunities. As Ethan and Victoria stood in the doorway of Lily's room, watching her carefully arrange framed photographs on her dresser, pictures of her parents who had passed away when she was young, alongside new images of her expanded family, Victoria leaned against Ethan's shoulder. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" she asked softly. "If I had told you about Noah from the beginning?" Ethan considered the question, his arm slipping naturally around her waist. "I'd like to think I would have risen to the occasion. But truthfully, I don't know. I was different, then more rigid, more concerned with appearances and legacy. And now?" He looked down at her, at the emerald pendant gleaming against her skin. "Now I understand what actually matters, what legacy really means." After Lily and Rosa had settled in for the night, Ethan and Victoria found themselves in the library, the space that had witnessed so many pivotal moments in their relationship. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across the bookshelves. "I called Noah before dinner," Victoria mentioned, curling up in an armchair. "He's having the time of his life at camp, building robots and making friends. He asked if you'd pick him up on Sunday." The simple request, a child wanting his stepfather to collect him from camp, carried profound significance. "Of course," Ethan agreed, warmth spreading through his chest. "I'd love to." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes with deep familiarity and shared history. After a while, Victoria spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "When I was living in that apartment in Roxbury, I used to have this recurring dream. You would find me somehow, discover I was alive. But in the dream you would turn away. You would say I was dead to you already and walk back to your car." Ethan moved to sit on the arm of her chair, taking her hand. "I won't pretend I wasn't angry when I first found you, betrayed, but walking away was never an option." "Because of Noah?" "Because of us," he corrected gently. "What we built together was real, Victoria. The foundation was solid, even if there were secrets built into the walls. We're renovating now, not demolishing." She smiled at the metaphor, so characteristic of his methodical mind. "A complete remodel. With some original features worth preserving," he added, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The gesture led naturally to a kiss, tentative at first, then deepening with remembered passion and newfound appreciation. When they finally parted, Victoria's eyes remained closed for a moment, as if savoring the connection. "I should check on Lily," she murmured eventually. "Her first night as officially ours." Ethan nodded, reluctantly releasing her. "I'll be up soon." After Victoria had gone, Ethan remained in the library, his thoughts turning to the journey that had brought them to this point. The grief that had nearly consumed him, the revelation that had shattered his understanding of reality, the slow, painstaking process of rebuilding trust and forging new bonds. None of it had been easy. There had been setbacks along the way, arguments about the past, uncertainties about the future, moments when the weight of deception threatened to collapse the fragile bridge they were constructing between their old life and the new one. But there had also been moments of profound connection. The first time Noah had tentatively called him Dad during a late-night workshop session. The afternoon Lily had proudly brought home an A on her English essay and insisted Ethan hang it on the refrigerator. The evening Victoria had finally shared the full story of her life before they met, trusting him with her complete truth at last. As Ethan climbed the stairs to join his family, he passed the wall of photographs that had once documented only his own ancestry, stern-faced Blackwood patriarchs and their elegant wives. New images now hung among them, Noah grinning beside his science fair project, Lily and Rosa at Blackwood Academy's fall festival, Victoria in the garden, laughing as she tried to untangle herself from a kite string. And at the center, a photograph taken just last week, all 5 of them together on the estate grounds, leaves swirling around them in the autumn breeze. Not the family Ethan had envisioned when he married Victoria 6 years ago. Not the legacy his parents had expected him to create. But as he paused before the image, studying the genuine smiles, the natural way they all leaned toward each other, he recognized something his younger self had been too rigid to understand. Family wasn't defined by blood or names or inheritance. It was created through choice, through commitment, through love that persevered even when tested by deception and distance. Tomorrow, Noah would return from camp, eager to share his adventures and continue work on their joint engineering project. Lily would likely drag them all to the park for what she insisted was the last perfect autumn day before winter set in. Rosa would arrive with her signature empanadas, declaring American food too bland for proper celebration. And Victoria, his wife, his partner, his own personal miracle returned from the dead, would be by his side through all of it. The emerald at her throat a symbol of a promise renewed, a future reclaimed from the ashes of necessary lies and unexpected truths. As Ethan reached the top of the stairs, he heard soft laughter from Lily's room, Victoria's voice mingling with their new daughters in shared amusement. The sound wrapped around him like a physical embrace, affirming what he had finally come to understand. Sometimes family isn't what you're born into or even what you plan for. Sometimes it finds you in a cemetery, through the honest eyes of a child who sees what others have missed. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to embrace the unexpected, it becomes the greatest gift of all. Film de Historia. Dear listeners, we hope you've been touched by Ethan and Victoria's journey from heartbreak to healing. For more emotional stories that explore the complexities of family, forgiveness, and second chances, we've prepared a special playlist of equally captivating narratives. You'll find it by clicking the link to your left. If this story moved you, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day, we bring unique stories that delve into life's most profound challenges and triumphs. What would you have done in Ethan's position? Could you forgive such a deception if it came from a place of love and protection? Share your thoughts. In the comments below, we'd love to hear from you. And don't miss our upcoming content. The next story might be exactly what your heart needs to hear.